Barb?
Mike and Renee both just said hi.
My two favorite foreigners. Oh wait, no, Renee was born here. Well, welcome Canada and the UK. So, good news. We've actually been talking about it in class, is I have been plotting my new class, which I will be teaching. It's going to start September 1st and go for 12 weeks through to November 17th. So,
Holy cow.
yes, holy cow. We're going to be, married for a season, all of us.
Cool. What are we learning?
It's on the deaconess, one of your favorite subjects. Not that you haven't studied it tremendously, but what will be great about this class is our astrologer in Australia, Dennis Sutton, has compiled a lot of new charts. So, of contemporary notable persons. So what we'll be doing is we're going to learn the folklore and mythology of the deaconess, and then we're going to apply them to charts of contemporaries. Now, the Brotherhood of Light lessons, which are close to 100, 75 to 100 years old, depending on which one was written first and which was written last. So a lot of the charts in there are of some persons who have remained historical and notable into this century. Some of them have fallen into the misty past of history, and we no longer recognize their names unless we're, history buffs. So we'll actually be pulling persons out of the news and contemporary individuals. And these are also some of the charts in the Brotherhood of Light lessons. We don't know for certain if those are the accurate birth times. Albert was somebody who was very confident about the process of rectification. Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Christy.
And so some of those charts were actually rectified. So in this class, we're only going to work with AA data, which is basically charts for which there is a birth record. And I think that's going to be exciting to not only study the material, the mythological material, but then apply it to contemporary charts. So that's what we're going to do. And because it is such rich material, we could actually turn it into 36 classes if we wanted, just taking one deacon in a week, but I'm not sure I could hold an audience for that one. So we're going to try and do 3 constellations each week and apply them. Question or comment, Barb?
I just let you know that Doug signed on.
Hey, Doug, welcome. All right, we have another chart for tonight. This is male number 3. Next week, which is our last class in this series, is female number 2. Once this class ends, I am doing the weekend roundtables, but much of my time is going to be focused on preparing for our upcoming conference. Very excited to know that Renee will be joining us, and some of the other folks out there are going to be coming to town for that. I encourage everyone who's interested to come. But I'm going to be having to shift my energy and really focus on that because I have a rather intense program for that. And then this summer, I need some time off, both to visit family out of state and to prepare for the fall classes because it's a 12-week class. There's a lot of material that I have to aggregate for that particular class. So September 1st, other than the weekend workshops that I'm doing, September 1st will be the first weekly class that we start again. All right. Any questions from anyone on the process thus far? Anything that's just boiled up in your mind that you're burning to know? Yes, Michelle.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear on a question about house rulership.
Okay.
When there's 2 or more planets, then the first planet within the house is considered to be the house ruler?
The chief ruler.
The chief ruler.
The
Oh,
other
okay.
planets are co-rulers, and then the planets ruling the sign on the cusp are co-rulers. So they all influence that house.
Okay, but the first planet is the chief ruler?
Correct.
And that's only if there's two or more?
Correct.
Oh.
If there's just one planet, then that planet is the chief ruler, and the planets governing the sign on the cusp become co-rulers. Planet of planets, Scorpio and Pisces and Aquarius all have dual rulership. Were you able to go through the handouts?
Yes,
Excellent.
yes, I was. I printed them all. Yes.
All right, we're going to speed through this so we can really get to the meat of the matter. As you all know, as of last week's class, I cut out the preliminaries, believing that all of you have pretty much handled that. So, basically, we're going through the chart now. We're going to just follow this, looking at each of the houses, planets in the house, sign of the cusp, where those planets fall. Here's the answer to your question. When there is more than one planet occupying a house, the planet closest to the house cusp becomes the chief ruler. All other planets, including the planet or planets ruling the sun and the house cusp, become the co-rulers of that house. When a house is unoccupied, the planet or planets ruling the sign on the house cusp become the chief ruler of the house. This is really important information, and it's only through applying it that we really get it. Generally, intercepted signs are linked qualities. I believe we looked at a chart last week, which had the intercepted sign of Gemini, but nevertheless, because there were 4 planets there were perhaps falling, it was the most powerful sign in that chart. All right, here we have chart number 3. This is a male. Let's work our way around the chart and start our interpretation process.
Don't we start with the 4 with the grades?
Actually, we're not going to do the preliminaries. We're just going to start with the cusp of the first house, which is known as the ascendant. And here it falls at 7 degrees of Virgo. So, who would like to hazard some interpretation, keywords, insights?
So Virgo is about analysis. And
I analyze.
I analyze, and it's ruled by Mercury,
So it's mental, intellectual.
and it's in the 9th house in Taurus, so they would have a personality that's just analysis, and I have situations. This is where I always go wrong.
All right.
I never
No,
get
I'm
this
not
far.
sure you went wrong, but
Okay.
let's talk about Virgo a little further. Let's get some depth on this. The key word is I analyze, and we know that analysis is the best trait of Virgo. The negative trait is considered criticism. You know, it's analysis on steroids, basically. You just get, Virgos get obsessed with the details. I always say that Virgo looks at life through the microscope and Sagittarius through the telescope. So they both have such different functions in terms of their worldview. Virgo is pictured in the heavens by the Virgin, who's also known as the harvest maiden. She is seen holding a sheaf of grain, which is basically the harvest or the fruits of one's labors. So the Virgo personality is very given towards work, towards labor, towards effort, towards somehow being of service. Now, first house matters have to do with health, physical body, personality, and self-expression. So we could see that in the personality, there tends to be keen perceptions that might be influenced by their experiences with travel or foreign countries, or their higher education, their their learning experiences might shape and mold that individual's personality, or the religion or philosophies that they encounter in life could be a molding element over that individual's character and personality. What about Virgos in terms of personal appearance? Fastidious, well-groomed. Again, it's attention to detail. So they don't like to leave the house with, any hair out of place, or, their collar turned down, or anything like that. So, they can be very given to their training and grooming and wanting a freshly pressed shirt or laundered, dress before going out. So these are all qualities. In terms of, what's that?
I would not have thought of that with Virgo, but you're right. I mean, I hear it and I'm like, yeah, you're right, but Virgo to me has always been a person that sort of doesn't quite get fashion. Like they were...
Oh, this isn't fashion. This is cleanliness.
Oh, cleanliness. Preening and pruning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily, if it was Libra, there's a good chance it would be fashion.
Right.
Or Aquarius,
Yeah.
Being concerned with what's au courant. But no, Virgo, the shirt may be well pressed, but it could be a striped shirt with plaid trousers.
Right, that's what okay. I didn't want to say that, but
Or brightly printed surfer jams. Who knows? You can say that. You can say anything that comes to your mind in this class, as long as you don't use bad language. We're in church, and we're being broadcast. So,
Okay.
What else might we say about this? What about the first house having to do with health and the physical body? How can we explore that with this chart?
Very much into health. This person is very much into health, and he probably might be a body weight person or some kind of athletic.
Well, very aware of what's going on with them physically.
Right. Sometimes Virgos can just be a tad bit hypochondriacal, because that level of detail, analysis, attention, and critiquing goes onto the physical body. Now, the part of the body governed by Virgo has to do with
or the small intestines.
both large and small, and the bowels.
GI tract.
Yeah, well, basically the GI tract minus the stomach. So,
Would this also be the personal description, like if the person has a fresh complexion, dark hair, average body?
excellent. Those personal descriptions are taken from Course 8 Orrery Astrology. I don't normally use those. The problems I've found with Zane's personal descriptions, we actually live in a multi-ethnic, pluralistic society, and in astrology, many of the descriptions actually come out of a European physical description category. So it's, but those are good to know, because there are times, actually, Erica, there are times where those are going to be spot on, accurate. So, we've learned something about him already.
At this point, can we also, given that Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, and Mercury up there is conjunct the moon, at this point, can we say even though the moon is in Taurus, which is pretty stable emotionally, but that person will talk about, will analyze their emotions? Good.
Yes, with Mercury and the moon conjunct, they cannot separate the intellectual process with the feeling process.
Oh, yeah.
So there can be the process of evaluating one's feelings, instead of just coming out and saying, I'm mad. It's looking at it from, okay, well, this happened and this happened and this is contributing to my feeling this way, sort of thing. But what about being vocal? the ruler of the first house in the 9th house of public expression,
Very vocal.
conjunct the moon. Very vocal. All right, we're moving along. 2nd house, money, finance, personal possessions. We have Pluto in Libra in the 2nd house. We have Libra on the cusp of the 2nd house. The Venus falls across the board in the 8th house in Aries.
So it's
And is in direct opposition to that Pluto. Curious combination.
so gratuities.
Let's take it apart a piece at a time.
Personal thing.
If we are thinking about the sign of Libra as being the tone that's set, or the environment, what are Libra possessions like?
I balance.
Social, thinker.
Pretty to look at.
Thank you. That's the answer.
Pretty
I
to
was
look at.
looking for. Libra would describe pretty to look at. You know, function follows form in that case, because they're the person who's buying something based on its appearance. I really like that toaster, it's a great design. It's not, you know, can I fit my bagel and English muffin in it, you know, or whatever the practical considerations might be. It's going for the aesthetic, going for the look. So that's the Libra approach to personal possessions. If we look at the Pluto approach to personal possessions, any thoughts on that?
Well, it's universal welfare, so wouldn't the urge be to be very generous?
One could be philanthropic by nature with Pluto in the 2nd house, thinking of groups, organizations, and social causes that they might want to support. And what about in other forms of astrology? How does Pluto express?
As coercion or large groups.
All right. Money could be made through corporations or groups. Pluto tends to be a drastic planet, however. It's an all or nothing planet.
Mm-hmm.
My experience of individuals with Pluto in their 2nd house is that they go through periods in their lives where they get rid of everything. They just let it all go, and then they start over again. It's like the phoenix, burning up, rising from the ashes. They may pack up and leave a house and leave everything behind in order to start anew somewhere. Whether this is like the immigrant mentality of, you know, just going to a new country with your suitcase, or somebody who may be forced to leave a bad marriage and decide that, you know, the furniture's not worth risking my life, I'm getting out of here. It can be those types of conditions, or somebody might enter into this phase of spiritual renewal in their life, where they suddenly decide. I saw a bumper sticker driving here today which said, the more you know, the less you need.
Wow, I like that.
I like that too. And that could be a Pluto in the 2nd house effect, which is moving towards some form of voluntary simplicity and paring down one's possessions to what's really absolutely essential somehow. Those are some thoughts on Pluto. Anyone else have a buzz on Pluto in terms of earning money? I find Pluto and Uranus in the 2nd house oftentimes create great highs and lows financially.
Well,
Again, with Pluto there, one's economics can be attached to mass destiny, and therefore they can be more impacted by things like the misfortunes of financial markets, or everything being in one jointly held mutual fund, or something of that nature.
Like they would lose money because they invested in a 401k that everybody else did, and that
And
401k
Was run by Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, yeah, you
And
got it.
since Pluto is so close to the inner plane, could this person in this kind of like have dreams or some kind of intuition for the lottery, something like that, you know, for direction? in possessions and money and stuff?
No, and I think that's a good analysis. Pluto also could mean that you use your ESP to guide you in the ways in which you earn a living. And
But Venus is up there opposing it, the 8th house.
right, and that's something we have to consider now. Let's move. What's Venus like ruling the second house? Basically a replay of Libra ruling the second house. I want beautiful things. You know, I want china, silverware, and linen.
Yep.
So, but it's across the chart in the 8th house, so his personal finances could be subserving it to other people's money.
Right.
Inheritances, gifts, grants, whether or not he's been included in somebody's estate, whether or not he's planned for his pension, the future. But Venus opposes Pluto. Herein lies a difficulty in the chart.
Separation.
Separation. And this means that one can become separated from their possessions, their wealth, or one could have a conflict of values. That would be another way of interpreting that, between sort of the austerity of and the spirituality of Pluto versus the luxury and sensuality of Venus. So if both are operating in you and they're opposing one another, you get pulled back and forth between, you know, oh, I want to live simply, and I want to give to this foundation and that foundation, and oh, look at that outfit on the clothes rack in that window.
And because they're both retrograde, would that opposition become more intense as they got older?
More than
and they had
likely.
to deal more with it?
Yes, it will intensify over time.
I had a question, with both the planets being retrograde, would that be an applying aspect? Because they're moving closer, or?
Well, Venus,
Pluto's
we've got to
slower.
figure this out. Venus moves much faster than Pluto.
That's right, yeah.
So,
It's,
Venus is 9/22 retrograde. No,
okay,
it's a separating aspect.
because the Venus is a faster moving planet.
Right.
So it's,
For
okay,
it to be applying, it would have to be at 12 Libra 22 or
moving
beyond,
back.
because
Okay,
it's
I
moving
see.
backwards to enter into complete opposition here. So there's some thoughts about money, finance, personal possessions. Clearly, we can see there's a conflict of values here, and therefore there could be a conflict of experience. What about Venus in the 8th house? We know that wherever Venus falls, we have gratuities. Things come to us easily. What are 8th house matters that could come easily?
Inheritances?
Or the opportunity to get in debt.
Taxes.
Yeah, if you have Venus, in the 8th house and it's harmonious,
Yeah.
likely you may actually get money back on your taxes.
Right.
If it's harmonious, there's a chance you get every week a new credit card offer in the mail. People are eager to get you indebted. And you've had enough good luck to that point to have good credit. But pulled into this opposition with Pluto, a change in the financial course could severely impact this person's indebtedness and their personal possessions.
But could it ever be manipulation of other people's resources
All right.
for personal gain?
Certainly. Let's look at that, because that could certainly, we're now going into the deeper, darker side of Pluto. Yeah, this could be the sidely whiplash of somebody looking at how they can acquire other people's money through charm, Venus, goodwill, and make it their own. So, of course, when we start looking at the relative harmonies and discords, we'll look at that for some key insights with all of this. Third house of mental pursuits, Uranus in Scorpio.
Intense weirdness.
Intense weirdness. Does this person's mind operate like everyone else's mind?
No, not at all.
No. Scorpio.
Very unique.
Scorpio tends to obsess on things. You know, you could have said something to a Scorpio last week, and they have spent the week thinking it over.
That's the truth.
So at the dinner table, when the sharp comment comes out and you wonder,
Where did that?
where did that come from? Well, the thing is, they've accumulated some energy over this. So Scorpio tends to think long and hard and deeply and profoundly about things. Would this individual have an interest in the occult?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, chances are they're fascinated by everything from computers to, anything that's sort of cutting edge, machinery, electronics are all going to be fascinations, labor-saving devices. How, with Scorpio, which loves to research and have kind of a detective-like mind, they could be very interested in using those as tools for finding out information. What about their traveling or driving habits?
Oh, erratic.
Thank you. Erratic.
My son not on the road with
Yeah, right. Uranus there might be a tiny bit of a daredevil, and what's
It's an opposition.
happening here?
Wow. It's opposition to Mercury and the moon.
Opposition to Mercury and the Moon. There's some dynamic tension going on here between the houses of travel and the houses of thought.
Well, hidden thought, third house, insights about people's emotional motivations. Mercury up there to work it out, to pull it apart and analyze it.
No, I think that's good. And the other thing is, Uranus is also the planet that governs psychology. That process of getting in and understanding what makes others tick.
Is there a little understanding there because Uranus is in opposition with the moon, because the moon in the ninth house would be the mother, representative of the mother, his mother. So, and the mother is a Taurus, so she's very practical. So, probably does not get along with the mother very well.
I'd say that's a possibility, or there may have been a sudden change early on in the relationship with the mother, where that could have pulled them.
To do with philosophy, religion, or
Right, it could have been a philosophy or a travel.
travel.
There are times, that we hear scary stories in the newspaper of, a father grabbing the child, taking him back to Iran or Pakistan or some other country, and that there is a unexpected forced separation. And it may go to some country where there's no extradition, or where fathers have rights and mothers don't have rights. And I'm not saying that's the case with this individual, but that's something to consider. There are unusual things like that happen.
And Saturn, because it's a T-square, right? When we look at Saturn there at 10 degrees south,
Yeah.
all in fixed signs.
Yes, ma'am.
Intensely weird thought processes, unlike anyone else's, and it may be tied into things related to electronics, travel, transportation, cars, those type of things. Now the co-rulers, Mars and Pluto. What about Mars ruling your third house?
Well, it would be sort of argumentative inside their own brain, like
feisty
their worst-
thinking,
Yeah, their own worst enemy kind of thing.
a good analysis,
But also a lot of energy there.
and a lot of mental energy. Mars falls in the 7th house, so what might they think about a great deal?
Their relationships,
Their relationships, especially when they are pissed off.
stuff.
And Pluto falls in the 2nd house. What else might they think about?
What they do or don't have.
Yes, what they have or don't have. I think that's really well put.
And their values.
Now, what happens when we think about what we have?
We become obsessed.
Well, I think
Generally, when we're appreciative of what we have, we tend towards happiness. When we think about what we don't have, we feel like there's something missing, and then we're usually unhappy. Unless if the thing that you have is a whole bunch of problems, then thinking about what you have may not lead to your happiness. But he would also have a great deal of thought about, finances, possessions. Now, home. Home and living
Neptune.
environment. Neptune. Describe a Neptune in the 4th house. In Sagittarius.
The
Great
whole
Philosophical home,
Spiritual.
home,
there was a lot of misunderstanding.
there could be confusion or misunderstanding in the home.
And because it's in Sag, it would have a lot to do with, again, philosophy or religion or publishing, something to do with sort of the higher mind. So,
What about a physical description of the home? What I have experienced with individuals with Neptune governing their 4th house.
they lived in a boat?
see.
Really?
Hold that thought. Is one, their home could be a place of travel. Or perhaps by the ocean or by a body of water. What does Sagittarius like in a home?
religious stuff.
A view.
Oh, you.
I see.
I see. They want that
Oh.
house on top of the cliff that oversees the ocean. That's what
The co-ruler is Jupiter. Could they be lucky in matters of real estate? Yeah, Jupiter Sagittarius immediately makes the home life somewhat lucky. They have great opportunities to move into great living places, often, inheriting ideal types of homes. But it falls in the 9th house of foreign countries or foreign travel. One might choose to live abroad. Or one could live abroad and it not be their choice. I mean, there are times where parents get up and move out of the country, and their kids might really want to stay at home with their school, but they have to be with their guardian. Anything else you want to say
Is
about
there
the
an
home life?
opposition? I mean, I know it's 15 degrees Sag and 3 degrees Gemini, but I don't know what the thing is.
No.
No?
Jupiter only forms 2 aspects in the entire chart.
That's to the ascendant.
A conjuncts the midheaven and squares the ascendant. No other aspect.
Oh,
I didn't know how far the whatever
The
it's
orb
called.
would be,
The orb. Thank you.
that would be a 12-degree
Gotta be
Orb.
a lot.
of a planet in
Angular and a succeeding house.
a cadent house.
Cadent house.
We'd go with the larger orb. I know it's 15 degrees for a luminary in an angular house. I do think it's 12 degrees, but it's out of orb because of the minutes there. So it's just out of orb.
But it would still have some influence, wouldn't it? Even if it's out of orb, wouldn't there still be some influence of Neptune being in the 4th and Jupiter in the 9th? Would you say
Well,
that
it
would
is,
have
because
the
it is the ruler, it's the co-ruler of the fourth. But it's not directly interrelating with Neptune, and there could be two different things going on here.
Ah,
There could be two different phases in this person's life, or let's think more about this. What does Neptune in a home, they like a dreamy home. They like a place that's kind of exotic or romantic or unusual in some way. Yeah, it could be lots of, sitting on the floor and eating with your fingers and incense burning, or it could be living in something like a Bart Prince architecture like we see around Albuquerque here, or something that's just otherworldly. All right, fifth house. What about love, romance, children?
Well, by Capricorn, it would be sort of not.
Sort of not.
Well, I mean,
Ruler in the 12th.
you have the ruler in the 12th house,
There could be secret sorrows over matters of love or romance or children.
Mm-hmm.
One could either regret having children or not having children. Either way, it could be a personal regret. The house is obviously weak and discordant since Saturn rules and it's unoccupied. So this is going to be an area where one might really have trouble getting a date or having a child. There could actually be some, physical reason that one might not do that. Someone might get a vasectomy at 19 and then regret it later.
Mm-hmm.
Or have ovarian cancer and, get a hysterectomy early in life and be unable to have children, or just, be conflicted about it, just like they don't want to adopt. Or you could end up adopting and getting a holy terror.
All right.
So these are different ways we could interpret with this.
Isn't Leo the pituitary gland?
Actually, I believe Zane
Or is it
considers that the pituitary secretes different hormones,
right?
and they're ruled by, I think, both Pluto and Neptune. In other systems, Leo might be associated with that, but
And fifth house, couldn't, with Saturn in the 12th, could also be just unconscious fears and limitations about intimacy.
yeah, one could be terrified by it or afraid of commitment. Sixth house, work and the work environment. Again, one of the weakest houses in the chart. It's unoccupied. Chief ruler, Uranus. Co-ruler, 12th house, Saturn. One would want, what about Aquarius governing your house at work? What would your workplace be like?
Unusual, for sure.
Unusual, could be social, might have to do with groups. It could be tied into things involving psychology or sociology.
I was just saying that, yeah.
Any other thoughts on that? Well, with the ruler Uranus in the third house, it might also be in an environment that involves study, learning, writing, the use of computers or technology. Or in the 12th house, working, if one was, let's say one went the route of a social worker with that Aquarius ruled. Sixth house, with Saturn in the 12th, who might be the population they're working with?
Institutionalized.
Institutionalized. This might be a social worker in a hospital, or in hospice, or in a mental institution, or somebody who's working with the homeless, or trying to get people who are in the most dire straits into a better condition. Or working specifically with very depressed people. 10th house, marriage and partnership. Mars in Pisces, Pisces on the cusp, Neptune and Jupiter, co-rulers. Talk to me of Mars in the 7th house.
Prolific partnerships.
Prolific.
I don't know.
Aggressive.
Aggressive, definitely.
Wherever Mars falls, we experience strife. So what happens if Mars is in your 7th house?
They argue a lot.
They argue a lot. You like to fight. And if you don't like to fight, you at least like to tease, so that you're just,
Poking fun at people.
yeah, you're poking somebody's buttons at times to see if you can just get a reaction. Ooh, that's right. Pisces isn't a great sign for Mars.
Look, 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 look,
You know, it's emotional. Pisces is compassionate. So what happens if you've got this sense of compassion and you do something bad to someone?
You
They
feel
don't deal.
Yeah, you feel bad. It only makes you feel bad because you're empathetic. It's like, oh, I really hurt them.
That would suck.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it also, because Neptune rules Pisces and that's on the 7th house, wouldn't that also make it kind of, like they didn't really quite get it, relationships? Or they
Well,
like
Pisces
are
creates-
confusing, or
deception.
they don't really get why that person's upset, you know?
Truly. I mean, sometimes one can have a really awkward sense of humor and
Right.
you just don't get it. But Pisces on the 7th house cusp. We've talked about deception, but also Pisces tends to be very
Idealistic.
romantic. You know, these are the twin fish tied together. They're looking for their soulmate so that they can smack them around a bit.
Argue with them.
Argue with you, tell you.
But they might want a partner for purpose of home, or someone to travel to exotic locations with the co-ruler Jupiter in the 9th house. They might need in marriage to share a philosophy with someone. You know, let's get married, we're both Mormons, or whatever it might be. We're both Scientologists, or Catholics, or Methodists, or, you know, it allows you to share a philosophy. So that can be important. But Mars is there and it tends to bring a little bit of strife to matters of partnership. That could be open enemies, Mars in the 7th house, opponents, competitors. 8th house. Death and taxes.
Death and taxes. And other
In my
people's
childhood,
money.
my mother would say the only thing certain in life, if I ever said, oh, I'm certain, well, the only thing certain in life are death or taxes. And so I was like,
Aw.
why is she telling me that? I'm sure that happened. But as I got older, I understood it better.
You know,
And as you get even older, you're faced with both.
Yeah.
the part that I don't understand about the sun in the 8th house is the vitality. Talk to me about that part, you know, because that part I always have such a hard time with, like.
So do they. The vitality. What
Yeah.
actually happens between 2 and 4 in terms of our body's natural daily rhythm?
Oh, slow down.
Slow down.
It is scientifically observed that humans go into their sort of lowest
Circadian rhythm.
at that time of the day, which is why in Mediterranean countries they have the good sense to have a siesta. I think that is the most
Why did we give those?
brilliant,
Yeah.
because, you know, the more northern Protestants invaded this land and developed it. But in the other countries, those other countries around the Mediterranean, they stop in the middle of the day and eat, rest, in a couple of hours, go back to work, and you go till 9.
Yeah.
So I actually think the sun in the 8th house has a lowered vitality. Even though it's not a Caden house, which we really think of. I think if you just observe that that is that time of the day, I mean, there is a type of death that happens. And I'm happiest on those days of the week where my schedule is set up that somewhere around 2 o'clock I can take a 20-minute nap. It recharges me and makes me fresh for the remainder of the day. I don't like to be driving during those hours because I know my attention is impaired. All right, Venus in the 8th house. We have Aries on the cusp, Venus in Aries, the Sun in Aries. There's a lot of Aries happening here.
Mm-hmm.
We know Venus doesn't do very well in Aries because it's opposite her home in
Right.
Libra.
They spend too much.
They spend too much, they can fall in love quickly and fall out of love quickly. In the 8th house of other people's money, we know that when Venus falls there, you're pretty good at getting someone else to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
You can find a sugar daddy or a sugar mama if you have Venus there. The Sun is there. One's self-esteem might be tied up somehow with matters of death. I mean, in the chart we looked at last week, and this isn't to imply in any way that persons with the Sun in the 8th house are mass murderers.
I hope not.
Yeah. Because that'd be, probably 1/12 of the population.
Yeah.
I didn't
Be
know that
too
about
many.
you. Way too many. No. It depends on what the life circumstances are that cause that psychic break to create abnormal behavior. But nevertheless, there is some fascination with death, dying, the spirit world. Is there life after death?
Mm-hmm.
9th house, religion, philosophy, the higher mind, foreign countries, long-distance journeys. Mercury in Taurus, the moon in Taurus. Jupiter in Gemini, Taurus on the cusp. So, we've got 4 rulers. Mercury, Moon, Jupiter, and Venus all rule this house.
It's very busy. and the moon is exalted in Venus, right? Or it's
Taurus.
Taurus. I'm sorry, Taurus. Yes.
The moon is
And
exalted in Taurus.
Yeah.
So, what would his philosophies be like? Probably fairly practical. It's Taurus.
Yeah.
Show me. I have. Don't teach me something I can't
But
apply.
Wouldn't the 9th house then have some overtones of domestic urges and something to do with that?
Okay, he might have a great need to nurture others through his religion or philosophy. This might be one of those churchgoers that gets out there and works in the soup lines to feed others. Or moon in the 9th house might be somebody who takes up their residence at a distance from their birthplace, wanting to live abroad.
Do they travel a lot because they have the planet of expansion in the 9th house?
They can travel a lot.
Conjunct the 10th.
That's great.
Yeah. But remember also, they are in
Yeah.
opposition. I mean, this could, opposition to Uranus, this could be the evil Knievel type of personality. Uranus opposing the moon. What about Uranus opposing Mercury? Does that make for great rational thinking?
No.
No. And it makes for a nervous system that's wound up tighter than an old-fashioned alarm clock. Highly strung when you have Mercury and Uranus pulling on each other, because they're the lower and upper octave of intelligence in the mind. So he might really change philosophies a lot, or have very quirky philosophies. Jupiter's up there, might have a lot of opportunities to travel, or just really have great wishes about traveling. We mentioned that Jupiter forms only two aspects in the chart, the conjunction to the midheaven and the square to the ascendant. What is a Jupiter-midheaven conjunction like?
Reputation is that reputation? Or, yeah,
In
it's very benevolent.
A benevolent reputation. You're somebody who's thought of in high standing. People will think well of you. They'll always ask, oh, how's so-and-so? But squaring the ascendant? Faulty judgment.
Yeah.
Jupiter thinks expansively. Oh, I could do that.
Nobody will think I did it.
Okay, Venus, the co-ruler in the 8th house. Maybe money comes in from foreign countries or foreign banks, or others give him money in order to take trips. If you have a really harmonious 9th house, which he does not, one thing that can happen is people will send you tickets to come see them. You will have gifts of travel.
Wow. It's very powerful. 129
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
was discordant.
plus discordant. So it's 18.7% of the chart, almost a fifth of the power is in the 9th house. So there is certainly something to this personality that either wants to philosophize, teach, or roam. Have great adventures.
Travel agent through computers?
There's a thought. 10th house of career, honor, reputation. No planets in the 10th house, Gemini on the cusp, Mercury's the ruler, falls in the 9th house. You might choose a career that involves travel or education, or publicity, advertising, promotion. One's relationship to one's bosses. Gemini fluctuates.
Fluctuating, right?
Yeah, Gemini's changeable. What about one's career? Changeable as well. One could have more than one career. Whenever I see Gemini on the midheaven, I always tell someone, oh no, don't think you just have to pick one thing to do in your life. Yeah, find a couple, because you never need to know when you'll need to put them into employ. The 11th house of friendships, unoccupied, Cancer on the cusp, the moon is in the 9th house.
So they would express to their domestic friendships, like they have friends at home,
Or
friends
one
at
makes
home.
their friends their larger family. They bring their friends in, and they may know friends from all countries, all walks of life, or they might make their friends through their higher education, their college days. Those buds may stick with them. They may spend their holiday. When the moon rules your 11th house, those are the people you want to spend your holidays with. They become your larger family. It's not always your blood family. And Saturn in the 12th house. Great sorrows. Sense of solitude, loneliness. One might hold their grievances within. It's tied into that T-square with Uranus and Venus. So we know that there's some great sufferings or regrets here that could be stimulated by speculation or one's love life or children, financial matters and or losses. Things could weigh very heavily.
Could they have a lot of restrictions from their mother or females in general?
Why would you say females in general?
It's the moon square Saturn, and the moon representing women. I know
Yes.
it represents,
Yes.
that's real general,
Yeah.
but
No, that's very general, but that's also an accurate interpretation.
and depression, because it's also
Moon,
square,
Saturn square leads to depression.
and Mercury's involved.
So
So.
with Uranus, it's kind of like a D square there, so there's upheavals through these.
Volatile emotions or volatile women that bring about, like, what was I thinking? What about the co-ruler? We have Leo on the cusp.
Affect them personally.
All right. And what about the 12th house ruler in the 8th house? Could one be suicidal?
Yes.
Yes. In extreme cases, that is a possibility. You've done very well so far.
We're getting better at this.
All right, what else do we want to know? Prominence of each planet, number of aspects received by it, strength of each house to influence things, blah, blah, blah. Powerful planet, sign, and house, harmonious planet, sign, and house, discordant planet, sign, and house. No? Astrological. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's organized up there according to power and not, according to planetary organization. It's basically an order from Sun to Pluto, midheaven ascendant from 1 to 12. But on your handouts, it should be organized
Yeah.
according to the power.
So
So
midheaven is the most powerful.
what does that tell us about someone? They stand out in a crowd. The midheaven's your lightning rod, basically. It's, the highest part of the house that gets touched, so to speak. It is your reputation. So a dominant midheaven makes somebody who is talked about, somebody who has a reputation, somebody who can move towards positions of power, authority, prestige. The midheaven and the sun are very important in the chart for prestige, power, and positions of authority. They function differently, but they do bring about some similar results. Saturn is dominant in this chart. What does that tell us? Maudlin, depressed, self-pitying, but also Saturn dominant can make one very serious. They might be concerned about safety, except what about Saturn squaring Uranus and squaring the Moon and Mercury? Is their sense of safety a little distorted?
Yeah.
I think so.
And is that because it's got such low harmony?
It has such low harmony, one, because it's Saturn, which is 1/2 discord. And then the aspects formed to Saturn, Erica, are a square to Moon, a square to Mercury. It does form a trine to Venus, a sesqui square to Mars, a square to Uranus, a trine to Neptune, sextile to Pluto, sextile to midheaven, and a semi-sextile. So it's not, all that discordant if we were to compare it to Uranus in this chart, which is really discordant, but again, it's discordant enough. Dominant discordant Saturn, one can wrestle a bit with self-interest or selfishness. One could struggle at times with things that might have to do with greed, but not always. You know, it really depends on the life, the upbringing, the environment of the individual. But overall, when Saturn's dominant, one carries heavy responsibilities, always a sense of duty, feeling like, it's the story of the little red hen. I'll do it myself. Who's going to help me? No one? I'll do it myself. Neptune is strong in this chart. It's in an angular house. Neptune, sesqui square the Sun, in conjunct the Moon, in conjunct Mercury, trine Venus, square Mars, trine Saturn, sextile Pluto, opposition the midheaven, square the ascendant. Neptune's making a lot of aspects. So, Neptune can make one visionary, imaginative, spiritually minded, highly intuitive.
It may be hard to get in touch with who I
they
really
are.
am.
Yeah, or knowing what their goals are. With Neptune opposing the midheaven, one could deal with conflicts over, oh, my parents want me to do this, my family have always been root beer salesmen, and I want to open a shoe shine stand somewhere. So there could be that conflict of, you know, whether their goals in life fall into agreement with what they've been programmed to do. All right, what about the harmony in the chart? The best harmony comes in through Venus. What would that tell us about this fellow?
Gets lots of money from his girlfriends.
He's well loved. Girlfriends take care of him. The greatest discord is Uranus. What warnings does that give us in terms of this chart? Accidents. Things that have to do with driving, transportation, and your wacky ideas. You know? It's like Ben Franklin with the keys tied to the kite in a lightning storm. Okay, what about the power of the house? Ninth house is most powerful. What does that tell us?
He's ruled by his philosophies or his religion or a higher mind.
Higher mind
You know,
and or
he could be a
desire to
college
travel,
professor
have
or-
adventures.
Yeah.
The eighth house, death and taxes.
Old money.
10th house, life goals,
Reputation.
career, reputation. The harmony here, and there's not a lot, but it comes in through the second house, money and finance. So what would we assume with the harmonious second house? Even though he might go through a lot of different ideas about possessions, finance, income, he'd always sort of be taken care of. Somebody's going to be looking out for him.
Yeah, just, I don't know why I get that, but it's kind of like the rich mom who's kind of taking care of the boy, you know, kind of dynamic. And so it comes and goes, you know, when she says it's okay to spend money, then I will, and, you know, that kind of.
Could be. Could be very similar.
Or all the girlfriends.
Or the girlfriends.
Now the
They'll
third,
take over from the mom.
the third house is the most discordant house in this chart. What does that tell us? Where are the perils in this chart?
Mind.
So his
Father's
inner thinking may be really erratic and
Issues with siblings and issues with transportation, with neighbors.
a bit OCD.
Yeah. What about the signs? Gemini is the most powerful sign where Jupiter and the midheaven fall.
Well, you know,
Best quality, versatility, worst quality, changeableness. Now, what's the difference between those two? It's just the labels we assign. Versatility is changeableness, but it usually implies being a jack of all trades. Taurus is second in strength, which is stable, down to earth, practical, habitual is a good way to think of Taurus. What does the Taurus person do? The same thing over and over again. They plow the field to one end of the field, they turn around and plow the field to the other end, and then they turn around and go back the other direction. So they do things in a routine fashion. Getting them to break out of their routines can be very challenging. Aries. I am.
Bit of an equal.
Could be egotistical, could have a lot of leadership, could be very enthusiastic and really move others and instigate. Remember, they're pioneers. They're the first sign of the zodiac. They like to start things off. All right. The harmony, Libra, beauty, peace, balance, poise, getting along with others. The discord, Scorpio, which could be obsessiveness, vengeance, jealousy. Let's look at the aspects. Let's see what we can find here. I see a very powerful parallel from the Sun to Pluto. Any thoughts about that? It's an intensity compound between the power urges and the universal welfare urges. Might make for somebody who's constantly pushing the envelope. Next in power, I see a conjunction of Jupiter in the midheaven.
Right.
Jupiter's 320, the midheavens 353. There's 33, just a little more than 1/2 a degree of separation here. What's going on? Do people love him,
Very much so.
despite the fact he lives off women? Yeah. Well loved. So, those are the most powerful aspects. Let's try to find the most harmonious aspect.
There's a conjunction between Mercury and the Moon that's at 9:42.
That's powerful, but it's neutral, because conjunctions are
Yeah.
neutral, the moon is neutral, Mercury's neutral.
And it's parallel, Pluto and Sun.
Also neutral, Pluto's neutral, the sun is neutral, and the parallel is neutral. So that's the most powerful aspect, but that's a neutral aspect.
So it'd be Jupiter and the midheaven
Let's take a look.
conjunction.
That's 5.73. Is there any other lower number that's larger than 5?
What about the trine between Venus and Saturn? 734.
All right. Well, I'd say no. That's the power. The harmony is 5.51.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, we're looking at the
wrong
harmony.
thing.
Look at the
That's
lower
what's-
line.
Oh,
That's what the problem is.
The lower line is,
Yeah, that's the harmony. The upper line is the power. Let's
That
see.
was my problem.
Here, in case any of you have questions, the upper line of each aspect represents the relative strength of the aspect. The lower line represents the conditioning energy, harmony or discord. There, now we're on this right page.
Thank you.
Sure.
Takes me a bit.
Takes all of us a bit, especially at this time of day. I'm going to go with the 5.73 for the conjunction of Jupiter and the midheaven. That's the most harmonious aspect. So here again, not only is it powerful, it's harmonious. Everybody loves me. I can do no
Could be
wrong.
like one of those pulpit ministers, you know, that make tons and tons of money. Going to eat otherwise.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody who would be Teflon, that things just would not stick to him.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the worst aspect? What's the most discordant aspect? That square of Saturn to Uranus is fairly discordant at 8.73. Can we find anything more discordant than that?
I think that's the most discordant.
Okay, well, what about Saturn-Uranus square? How does that affect your safety urges?
Insecure, very insecure.
You're insane. With Saturn squaring Uranus, Saturn's conservative, Uranus is radical
There.
and revolutionary. Saturn constricts. Uranus, on the other hand, is always looking for something new and different, something exciting to do.
So there's not insecurity there, it's just eradication, just being crazy.
Just being nuts.
Out there.
Well, and there could be insecurity. Sometimes somebody might be motivated by the group. Oh, they all think I'm a wimp. I'm gonna sit on top of the car while they drive at 50 miles an hour and see if I can hold on.
That's stuff.
Okay, what else do we need to look at in this process? Let's talk about specific aspects. Each week we've been looking at 2 aspects, and we're actually kind of on time tonight. So let's talk about the semi-sextile. This is called a growth compound. It's any time 2 planets are 1 sign apart or 30 degrees apart. It is a weak aspect. Nevertheless, it's energy, and it's a harmonious aspect. So there's usually mild but mutually beneficial conditions between the matters governed by those 2 planets. However, to take advantage of it, what do you have to do? You have to consciously work it. You have to carefully cultivate this energy in order to receive its benefits. So, let's look for some semi-sextiles. Well, here is a chart that's a pathetic example.
This has one.
It has one. Saturn, semi-sextile the ascendant. It is so wide that it has a power of 0.13 and a harmony of 0.07. This is almost a nominal aspect.
So does this mean this person can't even cultivate any work on himself?
With great effort. Great.
He goes to the
effort.
psychiatrist on a regular basis.
Yes, if you have disciplined, scheduled appointments,
At the
you might be able to
psychiatric hospital.
retrain your habit systems to function in a way that are constructive and geared towards personal safety.
trying to deal with that bad judgment from midheaven.
Yeah.
It's squaring his rising.
Now, the next aspect of equal strength to the semi-sextile is the inconjunct. The difference is the inconjunct is neutral. It doesn't add any conditioning. We call it an expansion compound because generally planets that are in an inconjunct, their matters start to grow and expand, but they then, like the opposition, fizzle out. So it's any planets that are 5 signs apart in the zodiac. Saturn and Mars add discordant conditioning. Venus and Jupiter add harmonious conditioning.
So what if it's Jupiter and Saturn?
Then they neutralize one another because one is 0.5 harmony, the other is 0.5 discord.
So they're just
It just becomes neutral. So, brings things to prominence and then forces them apart.
So this one you have to give up one?
Well, that's the opposition.
Oh, okay.
But this is something where it's the event looks like it's happening. Maybe you get to the third date, and that's when they hand you the Dear John letter at the table. So it actually looks like we're moving to have a relationship, and then
No more.
it's the fish that got away. Well, there's quite a few inconjuncts in this chart. The first that we see is the moon in conjunct Neptune. So, the domestic urges and the utopian urges are in a expansion compound.
Which means they fizzle.
They could fizzle out. So it's somebody who might really dream about living somewhere exotic.
Good.
Or they may just go and shop at,
Pure one.
Pier 1 or Cost Plus
Cost
and,
Plus.
create their exotic domestic life.
Yeah, it's something in Taurus trying to make sense out of something in Sag.
Right. Ultimately, there's no place like home. You may think you wanted to live in Guatemala, but the reality is,
Yeah, it's mutable fire trying to talk to fixed earth.
there you have it. That's the inconjunct. They're almost always so dissimilar
Yeah.
that there's a lack of relating that goes on there. So it looks like something's happening, and then, no, we can't date.
You're going to take a huge adjustment.
All right, what's the next one here? There's an inconjunct of Mercury to Neptune. The intellectual urges and the utopian urges.
I can talk about it, but it ain't gonna happen.
Right, getting it done
Yeah.
could be something else. But it could also be travels that separate one from their home. Pulls things apart. Okay, what else can we pick out here? We've got the inconjunct of Venus to Uranus.
Quirky women don't make it for.
Or it appears like they're going to, and then not. Might pull in financing for a car, and then discover, after he's left the car lot, that they're now calling and saying they want somebody to co-sign the loan. You thought you had the loan, but you didn't get it. All right, another inconjunct. Venus in conjunct the ascendant. Any aspect from Venus to the ascendant brings a certain amount of beauty.
Huh? Okay.
I mean, even if it's in opposition or square. Problem is, if it's in opposition or square, you don't necessarily benefit from it. It becomes a problem for you.
But see, in this incident, wouldn't it be like you could work on it, but it never stays with you, or something like
Right?
that?
It might be sudden fickle affections. Good time, Charlie. All right, you just interpreted the chart of a cat.
A depressed cat.
That's impressive. You actually did very well, and I'll tell you why. The reason I threw this in is what I'm trying to teach you in this class, again, is what astrology can and cannot do.
We can't tell you if it's a male tabby.
Yes, it cannot tell you at what evolutionary level the organism is.
That's a very good point.
And our interpretation of a chart always has to be at what level is that organism. Just as when you're interpreting the chart for a small child, you're going to describe it to some degree, especially around progression, somewhat differently than you might for a 20-year-old, a 50-year-old, or a 90-year-old. Because there are different things that happen at natural cycles in our lives. The same thing is, according to the type of experiences a cat has are going to be different than the type of experiences that a human has. So we went sailing along through this interpretation as though we were talking about somebody, some famous person out there that we would have the name revealed. He actually had a warm personality and was loved by everyone. Interestingly enough, this cat's name was Zeus.
Was this your cat?
It was Christina's cat.
All right.
Yes. He was born in 1977. And, but we lived together back then in a house by the water with a view of the ocean.
All right.
2-story house. Very exotic house. Yeah. 1970s in Ocean Park, California. Very exotic. He was born in Berkeley, but within 6 weeks on a boat. Born on a boat in a harbor in Berkeley.
Wow. No wonder he has your medicine for house.
But moved to Southern California, 6 weeks after birth. Fastidious groomer. This cat had he did end up with scrapes. This cat had, impeccable grooming habits. Never wanted to leave the house without looking perfect. Virgo rising. Yes, he was taken care of by others. Well, cats, as far as we know, don't have an economic system. Domesticated cats perhaps have toys or beds or a bowl that might belong to them. Other than that, not a lot of possessions. Now there are other animals, like pack rats, that actually create arrangements of possessions that are their stuff. Cats tend to be more possessive in the sense of territory than anything else. So really, how do we interpret finances and income and earning and a job when it comes to a cat? Unless this cat is in a meow 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 commercial. So, there are certain things that aren't going to apply here, and we have to keep that in mind. This pathetic love life and lack of children
Wasn't his choice.
was not his choice. No.
And therefore the Saturn in the
Yeah, I'm sure he regretted it terribly. Snipped at a young age. So, I never saw him with a girlfriend. He loved people and was around people all the time. And he found people to take care of him. But as far as I know, he did not have an active love life or any progeny. What else can we say about this cat? So we've already described the view.
But his relationships with others, with Mars and Pisces, how did that come out as a cat? Did he scratch you a lot? Did he
He would let you be very affectionate for a while, and then he might turn around and bite. Give you a little catnip. Or dig in his claws.
Right, that's what I was thinking, like that.
He loved to, what we call make biscuits, kneading dough. All right. He lived a daredevil lifestyle in relationship to automobiles. He would go out at night and sit on the curb. When he saw headlights coming from down at the end of the street, he would run his fastest across the street. You're seeing this T-square in action, lack of safety. He would run across the street in front of the car, running to the other side. Then he would sit on the other curbside, watching for the next set of car lights coming down the street. It's not funny. And run the other way. Do you know what happened?
Christina didn't like it.
Yeah. The cat disappeared. For months I smelled a horrible smell.
Oh.
And then when the painters came to redo the house and had to clip back all the foliage, we discovered under the front steps the desiccated body, it looked like an Egyptian mummy, of the cat.
So he was half dead, he crawled under the porch or something?
Right.
Yeah. He tried to crawl.
Got hit,
Oh.
crawled us under the porch, which is where he could go, and ended up dying there and drying there. And that's the story. So here you can see there are limitations to what astrology can do, but also in some other ways. We discovered from the chart that the perils were tied into travel and some really exceptional thinking in that area, which is also tied into sort of a self-destructive compound in the chart.
Did he live very long?
About 2 years. Short life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
he
son in
you know,
your
he
ways.
was the James Dean of the cat world.
Yeah.
My truckee got run over by a car, but he died right there in the street. He was just 3.5. He was
Mhm.
the youngest of all my
Yeah.
brats.
Lived fast, died fast. That's what happened here. So, basically, when you get a chart, you are limited by what you know about it. If the three of us here were, or the 4 or 5 or 6 of us here, we're actually sitting down with the client, we would have adjusted our interpretation to basically fit the life form that we were dealing with. It's the same when you go to work on a chart. For the astrologer to be effective, you also need some additional clues. Not only the chart, because I actually think we came up with some very effective information about this being from the chart, but we were limited by our lack of knowledge. The astrologer can determine, one's age not only from the chart, but by sitting with someone from their language and etc. We can determine certain things about an individual, which might be anything from education level to country of origin. There's all types of things that we use, we assimilate, and we synthesize into the process of doing a reading, so that that reading can conform somewhat to the individual. So this was my curveball in this class. Last week was one, because I really wanted us to look at a chart, because I've had people ask me, well, is this a nice person or not a nice person? And those, you can't tell those things. You don't know what somebody has put their will to. When you look at a chart, all you know is the potential of the organism. Is it a toad, a cat, a dog, a racehorse, a human being? Any questions on this class?
Could you cultivate that? And the cat was a daredevil. It's sitting on the curb. Why did you let it out? It's gonna, like my cats, I can't tell which one, I don't know their chart, but I just don't let them out. I mean, they have their big old cat area and then,
Yeah, at that time, in 1977, I was 22. We lived in an environment where the only way to keep the cat inside would have been to always keep the windows closed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
There had
so
to be,
what did you do?
it was the 70s, there was some freedom going on,
Okay.
So, There are certain things that I now, as a middle-aged adult, keep in mind with my pets that as a free-spirited 22-year-old living in a house by the beach didn't do.
Yeah,
So,
neither did I.
and would I have wanted to live with this cat trapped? You know, might not have been a pleasant experience. So,
A lot of hurdles.
all right.
Really
Well,
good.
that's it for tonight. So, see you next week for our final class. Goodbye, all out there. Thanks for attending this class, and email anything you like. Oh, I have a question for everyone and all of those of you out there watching. In the last class, we did a questionnaire of the length of class you wanted, and we settled on an hour and a half, though it was debated hotly. Not that it's going to change the next class. The next class is scheduled for Thursdays, but I wanted to get an idea if anyone had a preference for Tuesdays or Thursdays. Those are the only days of the week I'm offering.
And you want that vote now?
If, well, you're here, if it matters to you. I mean, if it's something that comes to the foreground of your thinking.
Tuesdays, I prefer.
I prefer Tuesdays, and I like the
Okay.
hour and a half because I'm dead tired right now.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Well, after the next class, we'll go back to Tuesdays. Unless all of the impact from the viewers out there is not
Next
very-
class meeting when?
The next class is on the deaconess, which is 12 weeks. It is scheduled for Thursday,
Oh, it is scheduled.
When does that start? Next week?
September 1st.
Oh, September 1st. Do we have another class here on Tuesday next week?
Next week, yeah.
Okay, and that will be the last of
I'm not
this.
changing the schedule
Okay.
for next week.
Good.
That would
We
be
said the
me.
next class.
Sorry, the next course, I should say.
Wow.
All right, good night, all.
All right. I'm gonna